Okay, so this is version 12.4.3, and I'm just gonna show you guys basically some of the areas I had issues with on the previous versions and compare it with this new version. Coming up here, we have a left fork that we have to take. So the navigation is basically showing that we have to take that fork, and there's two lanes. The lane on the left is where it should be staying on, but this right lane, this lane that I'm in now, is actually there's an arrow on the road which says that I can take the left fork as well as go straight. But sometimes it gets very difficult to get into the fork if cars won't let me in. So it would be better to stay on the furthest left lane in this case. But for some reason, all the versions on FSD wants to stay in this lane here. So yeah, I'll show you what's happening. So on the road here, you could see that there is an arrow that goes to the left fork and also straight. And you could see sometimes it gets hard because there's a lot of cars on the left. In this case, there's not too much traffic, so we were able to make it to this left fork. But when there's a lot of cars, sometimes it becomes very difficult to make this left fork, and sometimes it misses it and it ends up basically going straight and not taking the fork. So it would be better if the FSD just knew to take the furthest left lane when it's taking a left fork, just to avoid the possibility that it might miss taking that fork. So hopefully the future versions can correct that. So with this version, as most of you may know, you don't have to touch the steering wheel anymore. You just have to look out the car, and the eye tracker will see that you're actually paying attention to the road and not disengage the FSD. Sometimes I've noticed that when I wear sunglasses that it can't track my eyes, and it makes me touch the steering wheel in order to keep FSD engaged. So that's just something that I've noticed with this, that it can't really see through sunglasses. Or maybe it's just in my case, my sunglasses, the eye sensor or the eye tracking device can't see my eyes. But maybe with other sunglasses it does work. But in my experience, it didn't work. I've noticed that the strange, abrupt braking it did before in the previous version. I haven't noticed it that much with this version. Sometimes it still does do abrupt braking when there's a red light, rather than kind of gradually slowing down. I've noticed that a few times, but I haven't noticed it abruptly braking behind the car anymore with this version, which it did in the previous versions. So we have an area here that sometimes it gets a little difficult. So after this curve, we're going to have to take a left fork, and that left fork is sometimes very hard to get onto because there's a very short distance, and if there's a lot of cars, it sometimes can't get through. So you can see here we have to go to the left, and we have to quickly move since the left fork is coming up very shortly. And if there's a lot of cars here, sometimes it can't actually get to the left lane in order to take the left fork. But in this case, there weren't too many cars, so it was easily able to do so. So I couldn't demonstrate the fact that it couldn't get to the left fork if there was a lot of cars. But if FSD in those cases was able to be a little bit more aggressive with the turns, it would be a little bit better. So when there's a small space between cars, it should basically speed up and get into that small space. But the FSD is playing it more on the safe side, I believe, and it doesn't actually speed up to get into that small space between cars, and it kind of just slows down and lets the cars pass until there's a big opening where it can go in. And driving like that in New York City or any busy city where cars don't let you actually get in, driving like that, you won't be able to actually get into the lanes that you have to. So maybe FSD in the future can also add in a more assertive feature option into the FSD, because currently the setting that I have set now is on assertive, and it's not assertive enough in very busy situations. And maybe if they add another assertive level above that, then maybe that would work. Because I use this in Manhattan. Right now we're driving in Queens, New York City, but if I was driving in Manhattan, New York City, which I did with this version, and it needs to make a right turn or a left turn, it misses those turns quite often, and it's because it doesn't move quick enough to get into the proper lanes when there's a lot of cars. And I've noticed it just kind of slows down, waiting for an opportunity to change lanes, but that opportunity rarely comes when there's a lot of cars on the car, and drivers don't like letting people cut in front of them. So maybe FSD could come up with that, basically one step above the assertive level that it has now for busy city driving. This is another issue that I've noticed. So this, I'm going to disengage right now, but I've noticed it does that on all the previous versions too. So we don't actually have to get off this highway, which FSD is trying to do. So I let it kind of do what it wanted to do without disengaging it. And what it does is it gets off this highway and then gets back onto the highway on the next exit, which is, not necessary. It just needs to stay on this highway. But for some reason, at this exit here, it always does that. And I'm not sure why it does that. It's the navigation that is set that way as well. So yeah, I'm not sure why, but that's what it does. Alright, so this is another problem area that I had on all the previous versions. So I'm just going to kind of show how this version handles this situation. So coming up, we're going to make a left turn, and there's a subway station right above. So you see the steel support columns that are supporting that subway station right above. When the car makes a left turn, it has to make a right turn. So it has to basically make a left turn and then stick to the right lane. And when it does this, it seems to either drive straight towards the column and then the car would just stop, or it'll basically make a left turn but not stick on the right lane quick enough so that we actually miss the right turn that we have to make right after this left turn. So let's see how it does in this situation with this version of 12.4.3. Alright, so now it's going. Alright, so alright, it's leaving way too much of a gap in front of my car and the car in front. I'm getting a lot of honks because this is too much of a gap in a crowded city, so I'm going to move up a bit. If you leave a gap like that, a lot of cars will just go right into that gap, and basically I'll never be able to move. So you have to fill up the gap very quickly in a busy city. Okay, now we have to make a right turn right there, and there's two lanes, but you know, for it to make the right turn, it has to get into the right lane very quickly, but this FSD always waits way too long before it gets into the proper lane. And let's see what happens. We're gonna probably, let's see if we make this right turn. Okay, now you're making a right turn, but then there's traffic on my right, and this could lead to an accident. Or look at my, okay, see, you, okay, I'm gonna take over. You can't make a right turn when there's cars. So the right turn lane is basically on the right lane. So I had to be on the right lane in order to make that right turn. But FSD didn't do that. From the lane I was in, if I made a right turn, it's possible that I could have actually hit a car that was basically going straight on that right lane. Because I think some cars, sometimes they do go straight on that right lane. And also, if I was to make a right turn, it actually goes into a single lane. So, you know, it's just, you're basically trying to make a right turn when there's cars in the way, all right, from the lane I was in. So FSD has to somehow figure out a way to get into the proper lanes when it needs to make a right turn or a left turn or take a particular fork. And you know, I'm no Tesla engineer, but I think maybe they have to train it in a way where it doesn't generalize a situation. So in that type of situation there, you know, they can't just generalize it based on some data from 80% of maybe the fleet. I think they have to pinpoint it to a specific area on a map. So for instance, this area, you have the subway column, basically the subway station right above with the columns. So I think they need to train it so that in this particular area, it has to behave a different way when it wants to make a right turn or when it wants to make a left turn, because there's two lanes here. There's a lane here, where the lane that I'm in, and also the lane to the right of the steel column. Right, there's two lanes with the steel column in between the lanes. All right, and that may not be the situation in other parts of the world, but in this particular location on the map, that is the case. So maybe FSD can be trained for particular areas on a map. But again, I'm no Tesla engineer, I don't know. But if they train it that way, I feel like it could improve a lot faster, because you know, people are disengaging their car for a particular reason in a particular area. So the next time they train it, if they just take that data, then the next version should be able to clear all those mistakes or all those disengagements from the previous version. So I feel like if they do that, maybe it'll speed up the improvements, but it might be a lot harder than I'm thinking. Maybe that's not possible. And when they train it on the disengagements, I think they had an issue with that on one of the other 12.4 versions. So the car would kind of jerk around a lot, and it was based on the fact that they trained it on the disengagements. But maybe they can train it on the disengagements, but with the disengagements, they don't train it on the actual disengagement, but maybe from a second before the disengagement to maybe a second or two after the disengagement, and basically create a smoother path from those two time frames, so that they don't actually get the actual disengagement of the steering wheel jerking and using that into training the model. Maybe they could take a point a little before and a little after, and kind of draw a smooth, basically create a smooth transition between those 2 points when they train their AI. But again, I don't know how the training system works, but that's just in my imagination. Maybe something like that could work. Alright, well, that was my review of this version on this drive. Hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see further content. Thanks.